created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Verses 27 and 28. But God wasn't through yet. He had one more thing he wanted to do. Notice carefully what the Bible says happened on the next day, the seventh day of creation. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. This is the history of the heavens and the earth when they were created. Genesis 2, 2-4. Only God can make something holy, and the Bible says he did just that when he sanctified the seventh day. For to sanctify something is to set it aside for a holy use. Why did God make the seventh day a holy day? He made it for him and his creatures. Here is what Christ said, "The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath." Mark 2, 27 and 28. God gave this sacred time to man so that he could take time to remember that he did not evolve through millions of years, but that God had created him and all the rest of the wonderful world in 6 days. This was to be a holy time, when man and his Maker would renew their pledge of love and devotion together each week. Every week man was to remember that God made the heaven and the earth in 6 days and rested the seventh. This is what God asked man to do in the fourth commandment that God wrote with his own finger, putting this command in the middle of that sacred law of God. He told mankind to remember this day, because that in 6 days he created the earth, the sea, and the fountains of water. Had mankind always kept the Sabbath as a memorial of creation as God asked them to do, there would not be an evolutionist, infidel, or skeptic today. For they would have been reminded each week of their roots and their relationship to their Creator. As sin increased on the earth, man forgot where he came from and why he was here. When this happened, he also forgot how he should live. By the time of Moses, the people of Israel had almost completely forgotten about their God. They were immersed in worshiping the gods made of sticks and stones. God miraculously delivered them from their enemies and led them through the wilderness on the way to the Promised Land. In this wilderness he did 2 things to show them what he wanted them to do in connection with the seventh-day Sabbath that he had made for them in the first week of this world's history. First, God reminded them that he cared about them, and that he it was that had led them out of Egypt. They had run out of food, as they could only carry so much food for that great multitude of people. As they had come a month's journey from Egypt, the Bible says that they murmured because they had run out of bread. They didn't seem to have appreciated all the miracles and kindnesses that God had shown them. But a loving God provided food for them for 40 years. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not." The bread spoken of here is commonly called manna. "And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily." Then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, "At evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt." Exodus 16, 4-6. And each day they went out and gathered bread for that day. They now had food to sustain them as they journeyed in the wilderness. But wait a minute. Notice what happened on the 6th day of the week. "So they gathered it every morning, every man according to his need. And when the sun became hot, it melted. And so it was on the 6th day, that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. Then he said to them, 'This is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil today, and lay up for yourselves all that remains to be kept until morning.'" Exodus 16, 21-23. Moses had more advice concerning this bread. "Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none. Verses 25 and 26. Most of the people did what God had commanded, but some went out on the Sabbath to gather manna. And notice what God had to say about that. And the Lord said to Moses, How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. Exodus 16, 28 through 30. You see, the Sabbath was instituted at creation and was observed by God's people long before the Exodus. God's laws and commandments were given to man before Sinai, for it was not until several weeks later that God on Mount Sinai etched the 10 Commandments on tables of stone with his own finger. In the 3rd month of the Exodus journey, God brought the people to Mount Sinai, and there he appeared to Moses and gave him a message to share with the people. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. Exodus 19, 5 and 6. God had made a most gracious offer to his people. If they obeyed his laws and commandments, they would be a special people and a holy nation. One of those commandments was given to make certain his people would never forget their relationship to their Creator. In fact, it begins with the word remember. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord had made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. You will notice that the Sabbath is in the center, or the heart of those 10 precepts. God asked mankind to remember the Sabbath day as a memorial of creation. So you see that Sabbath is as old as the world itself. God promises his people many blessings if they obey him and remember his memorial of creation. Isaiah 58, 13 and 14 says, If you cease to tread the Sabbath underfoot, and keep my holy day free from your own affairs, if you honor it by not plying your trade, nor seeking your own interest or attending to your own affairs, then you shall find joy in the Lord. Had man always remembered that memorial of God's creation, the problems he faces today, a forgotten God, a meaningless life, an identity crisis, would all be solved. There would be no evolutionist. But sad to say, as we trace the history of God's people through the centuries, we discover that they quickly forgot what God asked them to remember. They forgot to worship him on his holy day, and strange as it may seem, before long they began to worship gods of sticks and stones. They lost sight of their roots. However, there were revivals of Sabbath observance during the centuries as God's prophets brought man's attention back to God their Creator. Isaiah emphasized that God never intended to confine the Sabbath to Israel or the Jewish people. Far from it. It was instituted thousands of years before the Jewish race. God did not restrict such a blessing to just one nation or people. He invites everyone everywhere to remember and keep the Sabbath with him. Through Isaiah, God said, Every one that keepeth the Sabbath will I bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. For mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people. Isaiah 56, 6 and 7. Nowhere in the Bible is the 7th day called the Sabbath of the Jews. Jesus made it clear that it's a day for all mankind when he said, The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Mark 2:27. And God said, The 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. Exodus 20:10. Jesus also said that he is Lord even of the Sabbath day. Matthew 12:8. Because he made it. That is why John the Revelator called it the Lord's Day. Revelation 1:10. The Sabbath is more than a memorial of creation and the Creator. It's a sign between